Hello everyone, welcome back to Baji Rao IAS Academy. From the past few lectures, we have been discussing the UPSC 2023 question papers, right? So we have been discussing 2023 General Studies Paper 2 question paper. Now, today we will discuss 17th question onwards and we will complete General Studies Paper 2. The question is the development and welfare schemes for the vulnerable by its nature are discriminatory in approach. So the question is asking that do you agree or give reasons for your answer. So in case if you agree that the developmental schemes or the programs are discriminatory in nature, you have to give reasons for that. Okay, and if you don't agree that the developmental programs or the welfare schemes are not discriminatory in nature, then you have to give the reasons for the same, right? So it is essentially either you agree or disagree, but the best way to write the answer for this question is yes, to a some extent, development and welfare programs are discriminatory in nature, and in the other part of the answer, actually, they are targeting certain sections of the population who are marginalized. They actually require the assistance from the government. Okay, they actually require the assistance from the government, and they are not discriminatory in nature. So you have to write both the sides of the answer and then conclude this answer. Now, first, what you have to write is actually uh, introduce this answer. What constitute developmental schemes, welfare programs? Right? So they are actually provided to the vulnerable categories. Vulnerable categories means scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, economically weaker sections, women, etc. So they are vulnerable categories, and these initiatives of the government, the welfare schemes provided by the government, are specifically focused at these vulnerable sections. Okay, so these programs are actually aimed at improving the living conditions of the people and also uplifting them from their backwardness and improving their socio-economic prospects. Okay, so thereby overall inclusive development is possible. Now, if you look at India's preamble, the preamble has clearly mentioned that India is a socialist state. In the preamble itself, it is mentioned that India is a socialist democracy. So socialist democracy essentially means that India will take into consideration, the state will take into consideration the existing inequalities among the different sections of the people, and the state will also take several initiatives for the upliftment of the weaker sections. So, if you look at the directive principles of state policy as they are provided in Part 4 of the Constitution, so they say that India is a welfare state, and those directive principles of state policy are also envisions the social and economic democracy in our country. So these developmental programs and welfare schemes will ensure the welfare state in our country. Now, we need to see some examples of developmental and welfare schemes for the vulnerable, which the government has already undertaken. Firstly, when it comes to social welfare, now what constitutes social welfare? Social welfare constitutes education. For example, the government has, brought Right to Education Act in the year 2000, 2009. So, according to Right to Education Act, there will be the provision of free and compulsory education for children from 6 to 14 years of age. 6 to 14 years of age. Now, apart from that, 25% of seats in private schools are reserved for the economically weaker sections. So, therefore, this is also education is also part of the social welfare program provided by the government to vulnerable sections. So apart from that, healthcare also part of the social welfare initiatives. Now the government has brought schemes like Ayushman Bharat, where 5 lakh rupees health insurance is provided to every household in our country. And apart from that, we have programs like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, urban and rural. So it primarily provides a sustainable housing for every poor household. And apart from that, the social welfare programs also encompasses nutrition and sanitation. In nutrition, the programs like National Nutrition Mission, okay, and midday meal program, and sanitation, Swachh Bharat Mission, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So these programs are comes under the umbrella of social welfare programs, and these programs are primarily aimed at the vulnerable sections of the society. Okay, so who are the vulnerable sections? We have already discussed. So the vulnerable sections constitute scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, transgender, economically weaker sections, women and children. Now, so empowerment. As part of the welfare programs, the government also takes certain initiatives which are aimed at the empowerment of the certain backward sections. So because of the caste system and because of the social hierarchies prevalent in our society, there are certain sections who are considered as historically, discriminated. They are facing historical injustice. So the in order to uplift them from the conditions, the government has provided various welfare programs like skill development under Skill India program and education. The measures the government has taken for improving the quality of education or education standards, and then capacity building measures are all part of the social welfare programs implemented by the government. Now, apart from that, the legal framework. So, what kind of a legal framework? For example, the government has brought Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1988. So, this through this act, it prevents the atrocities, the violence against the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So thereby protecting them from the historic injustice being meted out to these communities. Now, apart from SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, we also have National Food Security Act. This Food Security Act will provide food security to around 80 crore of India's population. So therefore, these all programs comes under the developmental and welfare schemes taken by the government. Now, earlier also I have told you, for housing, for sustainable housing, the government has introduced a program called Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Now, this program primarily aimed at providing affordable housing for all, right? So, creating around 2 crore houses, building around 2 crore houses for poor households who are either homeless or living in urban slums. Now, apart from that, the midday meal program has also been introduced by the government. So, the main aim of the midday meal program is to improve the learning outcomes of children and reduce the dropout rate, and also simultaneously increase the enrollment rate of children in schools. So, this is the midday meal program. Now, taking inspiration from the midday meal program, now several state governments like Tamil Nadu and Telangana, remember this, Tamil Nadu and Telangana, so they also started implementing the breakfast also along with the midday meal program. They also start to provide midday meal. So what happens ki this will improve the nutrition, the nutrition intake among children, and it will also attract it will also improve the enrollment rate of children in the schools and reduce the dropout rates. Now, we have discussed what constitute welfare programs and developmental programs. Now, the first part of the answer we need to write, these welfare programs or the developmental schemes are discriminatory in nature to a certain extent. How they are discriminatory? We need to write that. So, firstly, they usually have the non-universalist nature. The government programs usually have a non-universalist nature. Non-universalist means whenever the government has come up with a new welfare program, the welfare program is not applicable to all the people. Okay, so there are certain targeted groups, and only these welfare programs are available to those targeted groups. For example, the government has brought Ujjwala Yojana. Okay, you all know about the Ujjwala Yojana. Now, Ujjwala Yojana provides free LPG connections, free LPG connections to poor women or women who are in BPL category. So in this case, only poor BPL women will get benefits of Ujjwala Yojana, but not all the women. So therefore, welfare programs are discriminatory because their non-universalist nature. Now, apart from that, these welfare programs also have a targeted approach. So targeted approach means, so all the welfare programs or the developmental programs, they target a certain populations, not everyone. If you look at the Stand Up India program, the program has been launched by the government to provide to increase the entrepreneurship. Now, this Stand Up India scheme is only benefiting scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and women beneficiaries. Only they can avail the benefits of the Stand Up India program. Now, after that, affirmative action. Now, affirmative action is reservation, which is provided to certain backward sections of the society. Reservations are provided for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes also. Now, when it comes to the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, women are also given 33 percentage of reservation at the local level. Now, if you look at these programs, the affirmative action, they primarily provided for the backward classes to rectify the historical injustice actually done to them. Okay, so this is also a preferential treatment of those sections, but it is also not applicable to every section. So this can also be considered as a welfare measure which is discriminatory in nature. Now, apart from that, there is also a huge resource competition in providing welfare programs or developmental benefits to different groups. For example, whenever these resources are being allocated for the vulnerable sections of the society, so there may be competition. Okay, so because of limited resources, there will be a huge competition. Now, you can apply this to quotas, the reservations. So, because around 60% of seats are reserved for various categories, and just for within 40 percentage of the seats, all the categories of the people, they can contest. The competition will increase for just 40 percentage of seats. So therefore, resource competition has also been increasing. So whenever there is a huge competition, there's a chance that it will benefit only the well-off, the socially, economically, politically well-off communities, thereby depriving the other sections of the society who are historically, deprived of welfare. Now we have written one part of the answer. So one part of the answer is that yes, welfare programs and the developmental measures taken by the government are discriminatory in nature. Now on the other side, we need to we disagree on this. So those developmental programs are not discriminatory in nature. They are not discriminatory in nature because they provide for equity and justice. How? Because these marginalized groups, vulnerable sections, they already faced a lot of discrimination in the society, social exclusion, political exclusion. So, therefore, these schemes envision equity and social justice for those communities. Okay, so they primarily aimed at reducing the disparities. Okay, so reducing the discrimination and disparities, discrimination and social disparities among these communities. Now after that, for example, the Manrega scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, has been launched, and this scheme provides for guaranteed employment for the poorest sections of the society. Okay, so apart from that, there's also another scheme, the scheme called Pradhan Mantri Shri Scheme. This scheme is primarily aimed at providing quality education, right? So through quality education, inclusion and equity are possible. Now, the second point that these welfare schemes are not discriminatory in nature is that, so whatever measures the government has been taking, they are actually compensating the already done historical wrongs. For example, they has the backward sections of the society, they have faced huge historical injustice and historical injustice and also discrimination. So therefore certain groups have faced these discrimination and injustice. The government programs will provide them some relief so that they can come out of the discrimination, and they are also part of an inclusive society. Now after that, the caste based reservations are also provided. For example, article 330 and article 332 provided for reservation for SCs and STs in proportion to their population in parliament plus state legislature. Okay, so the caste based reservations are also provided in order to provide relief for the backward sections from historical injustices and the discrimination they have faced. Now after that, these welfare programs are also envision the positive discrimination but not reverse discrimination. Okay, so positive discrimination means, so this was defined by the Supreme Court in Devadasan versus Union of India case. Now in this particular case, the Supreme Court has interpreted Article 14 of the Indian Constitution as equality. Equality does not mean absolute equality, rather equality means equality among equals, equality among equals, right? So therefore uh, equality is does not among every individual of the nation, but equality among the equals. So this is what the Supreme Court has defined. So therefore, the affirmative action is actually provided for the positive discrimination, because in this particular case, the reservation was challenged on the pretext of Article 14. So it provides equality before law and equal protection of laws. So since everyone is equal, there's no need to provide reservation, affirmative action for the weaker sections. So however, in this case, the Supreme Court has held that, so equality signifies equality among equals. So since they have faced the historical injustice and systematic discrimination, we cannot consider them, as equals. So since we cannot consider them as equals, the positive discrimination or the affirmative action is actually justified, so that we can uplift them from their backwardness. After that, it is also a constitutional right. The welfare programs, the developmental programs is actually a constitutional right, because the fundamental rights provided for the political democracy and directive principles of state policy provided for the social and economic democracy. So therefore, Article 14 to 16, they have provided fundamental rights in terms of positive discrimination, that uh, please recognize the backward classes, so the deprived sections, and provide them with adequate affirmative action. So therefore there would be some a level playing field among different sections. And in fact, the directive principles of state policy has also envisioned welfare state. It has also envisioned the welfare state. So through welfare state, the government will ensure that the welfare programs are actually provided for the weaker sections of the society. Now, so this is all about this question. So this question has two parts. So the first part, that uh, why the developmental programs or the welfare programs are discriminatory in nature, and in the second part we need to write those welfare programs or the developmental programs are actually justified. So this is how we can write a balanced answer. Now, after that, in conclusion, we can write about the need for providing such welfare programs, such a development for the weaker sections, so that there will be a level playing field and India can move towards a more egalitarian society. Now, you can also write about the Amartya Sen's approach of capacity building here. Okay, capacity building approach of the Amartya Sen. Right. So capacity building essentially means that improving human resources, investment in education, healthcare, skill development. So in this way, we can create a more egalitarian society. Okay. So this in this way you can conclude this answer. Now the next question is about the skill development programs. Now skill development also constitute an essential aspect of the overall human resources development. Right? So in this context, the question has been asking that skill development programs have succeeded in increasing the human resources supply to various sectors. Now in this context, the statement analyze the linkages between education, skill and employment. Now, so whenever a quality education is provided to people, then they can develop adequate skills. They can develop adequate skills. So when they can develop adequate skills, they can be employable. They can be employable. So when they are employable, ready for employment, they can either be part of the workforce, okay, formal workforce. They can either part of the formal workforce, or they can start a new they can be entrepreneurship also. So they can be part of the entrepreneurship also. So therefore there has been a linkage between education, skills and employment. Now we need to correctly establish the linkage between education, skills and employment in this answer. Now when you start this question, it is better to start with some data, because when you start this question with data, it would be more impactful. So you can quote the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship data. So this MSDE data suggesting that over 100 million, over 100 million. So 100 million means around 10 crore people have been trained through various skill development programs. And we know that in India, several skill development programs have been launched. So what are those skill development programs? Skill India program, and Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushalya Yojana, so PM Kaushal Vikas Yojana, okay, and National Skill Development Corporation. So various recognition of peer learning scheme also. So since 2015, various such skill development programs have been launched, and it is estimated that around 100 million people have been trained through these skill development programs. Now we have given data, and secondly we need to discuss the linkages between education and skill development. First we need to write about education, how education is actually a foundation. Now first, we should focus on basic education. Basic education covers primary education, secondary education, because in this stage of education, the students usually develop fundamental literacy and numeracy skills. Fundamental literacy and numeracy skills are very important to make students innovative and they have strong cognitive abilities. Now, when they have a strong cognitive abilities, it helps them to become more innovative. It helps them to become more innovative. Now, innovative workforce is a very important for a country like India, for an emerging country like India, where we have been competing with countries like China and USA in patent filings and creation of unicorns. Now, after basic education, the higher education is one thing that we should excessively focus upon. Now, higher education also plays a very important role because it actually prepare individuals to excel or to get expertise in various fields and professions. Now, if you look at some data since 2014 15 financial year, there has been an increase of around 72 lakh enrollments. Okay, so this survey was released by All India Survey on Higher Education report. So there has been a gradual increase in the enrollment in higher education. Now, after that, the national education policy that was released in the year 2020. So this national education policy has also emphasized on skill development of the students along with the formal education, because when students have adequate skills, when students learn a vocational, when students are equipped with vocational training, so they can be readily employable once they come out once they're part of the workforce. So therefore, the national education policy 2020 has envisioned a better integration or deeper integration between higher education and also vocational education. Now, after that, we need to talk about skill development as a complement. Now, we have discussed education, and after that, we should talk about skill development. Now, in skill development, there are two varieties or two categories. One is technical skills development and also the vocational training. Now, these technical and vocational training, they actually offer specific practical skills, and these specific practical skills are directly applicable to various industries. Right? So we have textiles industry, leather industry, and also cement industry. So it is applicable to various industries. Now, apart from that, soft skills are also very important. Soft skills include the interpersonal communication, teamwork, problem solving, and adaptability of a candidate. Because when an individual develops soft skills, there's a very high probability that he would be playing a very important role in a particular company. And placement retention, for example, we have provided skills to an individual, and now the individual is employed. Okay, individual is now employed. So after his employment, retention is also very important. Retention of the candidate is also very important. So the retention of the candidate is primarily depend on these factors, the soft skills. So therefore, emphasis should also be placed on developing soft skills. Now, if you look at the India skills report, so this is one of the very important report, and this report gives an overall understanding of the situation of India's skills. And this report has reveals that there's an overall improvement in the employability. Now, employability is the students who are coming into the workforce, how many of them are readily employable, right? So this is overall employability. So earlier this employability was around 46.2 percentage. Now, this has been increased from 46.2% to 50.3%. So, therefore, the young workforce, which is coming out of the higher education or the education system, they employment chances or the employability chances have been gradually increasing. So this is the positive trend. Why? Because it shows there are industry relevant skills. There are industry relevant skills among the people, among the workforce, young workforce. Now, after that, the third aspect is employment. So, in the employment, we need to focus on developing skills, no doubt about that, but those skills have to be aligned with the industry requirements. Because if there is a mismatch, if there is a mismatch between the skills acquired by the candidate and the skills required by the industry, then he would not be employable. He would not be readily employable even though he has certain skills. Maybe those skills are outdated skills. So therefore there should be a constant academia industry linkages. Whenever there are constant industry academia linkages, there's a probability that the candidates would be imparted with the industry relevant skills. Now when there are industry relevant skills, he would be readily employable. So therefore, there is a need to align the skills of students with the industry needs, industry requirements. So this makes individuals job ready once they have completed their education. They are employable and they are job ready. Now, imparting skills does not mean that okay, the particular student has skills. Now, the skills is not just for getting a job, okay, not just for getting a job or an employment. Rather, these skills are also for entrepreneurship. These skills are also for entrepreneurship. Now, nowadays, since we have been excessively focusing on entrepreneurship of individuals through Startup India program, Stand Up India program, Make in India program. So, India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, third largest startup ecosystem in the world. India also has the third largest unicorn companies in the world. So unicorn company is a company which has overall $1 billion market. Okay. So after that, we need to write a brief way forward. Now, it is also important that how can we move forward. So this way forward consists of suggestions. So firstly, increasing the employability. How can we increase the employability? Now, earlier I have discussed about the industry relevant skills or aligning the skills which are already acquired by the student with the industry needs, industry demands. So therefore there is a need for industry and academia collaborations. So whenever there are industry academia collaborations, there's a greater chance that the students who are coming into the workforce, they will be more and they will be readily employable. Secondly, so there is a need for regional skill development centers. For example, in a particular region, and the region has known for a particular product, so whenever there is a regional skill development, so these regional skill development centers would train the local workforce, and it will help them in excelling those particular area. For example, a skill center in a region known for handicrafts, so it can offer courses in modern design techniques. So within the handicrafts, it can train the workforce in modern design techniques, so it helps them local artisans to innovate and compete globally. Now after that, there's also an inclusive approach in the sense that because whenever the skill development program has been launched, the skill development program should also taken into consideration the the socially deprived sections, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and disabled people, Divyangjans, so that it could be considered as an inclusive in nature. So therefore, these skill development programs should be more and more inclusive in nature. So it should also cater to the diverse groups, including the differently abled populations. Now, after that, there's also in Industry 4.0. So, Industry 4.0 is Industrial Revolution 4.0 that is powered by emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, big data, data analytics, machine learning, etc. So, therefore, Industry 4.0 has a huge potential in creating large scale employment opportunities. So, therefore, our skill force, our existing workforce, need to have such a robust skills so that India is the country with a median age population of just 28 years compared to China, which has around 38 years. So, in fact, several countries have been facing the demographic shortages also. Countries in Scandinavian countries, Japan. So they require a huge workforce. So India can meet the requirements of these workforce. So therefore, Indian workforce should have the Industry 4.0 relevant skills. Now, we have discussed the way forward, and we have also discussed the linkages between education, skill development, and employment. Now, in the conclusion, you have to write about the need for focusing on vocational education and also the skill development of our workforce. Because if you look at the data, only 4.68 percentage of India's total workforce is formally skilled. However, when it comes to when you compare this data with Japan, so around 86 percentage of its population are formally skilled, and in South Korea, around 96 percentage of its population are formally skilled. So therefore, India should excessively focus on skill development. So India can particularly focus on vocational training of students, vocational training, and promoting innovation and skill development of existing workforce. So these aspects would make India achieve its ambitious goals. So this is how you can conclude this answer. Now, the third most important question is with respect to the expansion of NATO. The expansion of NATO. Now, why this question has been asked by the UPSC? Now, the Russia-Ukraine war has been is a major result of NATO's further expansion towards the Eastern Europe. Uh, Now, NATO was formed NATO was North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So this group was formed in 1948. 1948 as a collective security organization. So this group is particularly relevant during the Cold War period. During the Cold War period, because of the Soviet threat. But even after the fall of the Soviet Union or disintegration of the Soviet Union, NATO continued to exist, and it even further expanding towards the east. So therefore, Ukraine's ambitions to be part of the NATO grouping led to Russia launching a the so-called special military operation against Ukraine. So therefore, in this context, the question has been asked that the expansion and the strengthening of the NATO and stronger US-Europe strategic partnership works well for India. Okay. Now you need to write your opinion. So what is your opinion about the statement? And if your opinion is in favor of the question, so what is asked in the question, you have to give reasons and examples. And even if you oppose the statement given in the question, then also you have to write the supporting reasons and also examples. Now, firstly, you have to start the answer with what exactly is NATO, right? So, this North Atlantic Treaty Organization, it was initially established as a political and military alliance. So why it was established? So it was established to foster the collective security in the transatlantic region. This includes US and Canada and Western European countries. Now, Eastern European countries are largely part of the NATO grouping. Now, over a period of time, the NATO has been undergoing expansion. Now, in fact, recently, member countries like Norway, Norway is part of NATO grouping recently. So it has become the 32nd member of it has become the 32nd member of NATO. So therefore, you know, uh, the NATO grouping has been further expanding towards eastwards, and simultaneously, US and Europe have also been fortifying their strategic partnership. So, in the backdrop of Russian threat and Chinese, expansionism or Chinese aggression assertiveness, so they have been fostering a very strong strategic partnership. Now, in this context, we need to write how it actually benefits India. So, what are the benefits for India? Now, when it comes to the benefits for India, firstly, it ensures security cooperation. Okay, strong security cooperation for with India. Now, we know that India has been majorly dependent on Russia for its defense supplies. So, for example, most of around 60% of India's imports are primarily from Russia. So, in this context, India has also been trying to diversify its defense imports, the first thing, and also trying to achieve self reliance in defense manufacturing. So, in this particular context, the security cooperation between India and European Union and USA will definitely help India. For example, India's have signed agreements like Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement and Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. Okay, and also COMCOSA. So these agreements will ensure that India will have a greater technology, the defense technology from these countries. And recently, if you look at India and European Union defense cooperation, India has acquired Rafale fighter jets from France. So therefore, there will be a strong security cooperation, strong defense cooperation. And apart from that, NATO has a huge expertise in counterterrorism strategies. How it has a huge expertise? Because it has it has a huge experience in Middle East and also Afghanistan. So therefore, this expertise of NATO will be helpful for India when it comes to intelligence sharing on movement and strategies of terrorist groups. Because if you look at India is one country which is a very actively vocal against terrorism and terrorist organizations because of the concerns within the region when it comes to Afghanistan and Pakistan. So therefore it is a key concern for India. Secondly, the economic stability. Now, in the context of economic stability, we all know that in G7 and G20, both US and majority of the European Union countries are part, and they are also economic giants. So whatever decisions they usually take, that would have a global repercussions. That would have a global repercussions. And when they take some positive measures, that could have a global economic stability. That could foster the global economic stability. Now, whenever there is a global economic stability, that indirectly benefits India. How it indirectly benefits India? For example, it could bring more FDIs into Indian economy. Now, apart from bringing more FDIs into Indian economy, it could fuel India's infrastructure growth. So therefore, it could indirectly benefit India. There's an example also given. Recently there was US and European Union Trade and Technology Council meeting. So this Trade and Technology Council meeting could potentially have the decisions or the policies that could foster global economic stability. Now, after that, the technological advancements. So, apart from the economic prowess of these countries, they are also very well known for technology, the technological advancements. So, therefore, India's close collaboration with the NATO allies, member countries of NATO, will help India developing most sophisticated defense technologies. So here you can give example of Rafale fighter jets. So India has acquired these Rafale fighter jets from NATO member country France. So after that, climate change is the most pressing concern for India. India has been, taking several measures to ensure that its climate obligations and the climate commitments are met at the earliest. Panchamrut is part of the program where India has announced different policy aspirations with respect to climate change. India has launched International Solar Alliance, and India has also launched Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure. India has also launched IRIS. Okay, so infrastructure resilience for island states or small island states. So in this context, those countries have a huge expertise in terms of clean energy and climate resilience, and this climate resilience will help India achieve its ambitious targets. In fact, under Paris deal, these countries have to provide $100 billion to developing countries, and the technological and financial assistance, the technological and financial assistance provided to developing countries by these countries is also important to meet the climate obligations. Now, after that, so when it comes to healthcare, the COVID-19 pandemic has actually showcased the need for or the importance of global collaborations. So, how global collaborations are very important. In fact, India can enhance its healthcare infrastructure. Now, we all know that India has been spending just 1.9 percentage of its GDP on healthcare. However, these countries have been spending close to 6 percentage of GDP on their healthcare. Now, this is an opportunity that India could rapidly revamp its existing healthcare infrastructure. Now, India can collaborate with these countries in vaccine development and knowledge sharing. Okay, for that it is also very important. Now, apart from that, India is known as world's largest democracy, and also world's oldest democracy, and all the NATO countries are also democracies, so they can share these democratic values. And for example, the like-minded countries have come together. Okay, so they have come together and they have part of the quad summit. So this quad summit particularly aimed at containing Chinese aggression and assertiveness in the region, and also ensuring the democratic principles are rightly followed in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, after that, energy security is also a very important dimension. Now, because in India, around 63 percentage of our total energy is produced from thermal power plants. And India has been importing 85 percentage of its energy requirements, right? Fossil fuels. So therefore, in this context, it is very important for India to have a robust energy security, and this could be possible with European Union and US Energy Council, or a strong strategic partnership between these two countries. And with a close cooperation and collaboration, these countries could share renewable energy technologies with India, and also India could tap into the nuclear energy agreements. So the one that has been made in 2006, that is US India nuclear agreement. So, however, it is not free from challenges. In fact, there are several challenges. So, what are those challenges? So, the challenges include the Russia's relations. For example, India has recently procured S-400 missile defense system. S-400 missile defense system. Now, in fact, USA has been looking for India. USA has been looking to reduce India's dependence on Russia for its military systems. So, therefore, it has been rapidly engaging at the defense level, security level with India. So, therefore, USA's involvement in this regard could potentially strain India's relations with Russia. Now, after that, because of India's drift towards USA, there has been a strong cooperation between China and Russia, and also there's a growing axis between Pakistan, China, and Russia. Pakistan, China, and Russia axis. And this could work in India's disadvantage. This could work in India's disadvantage. So this is also a key concern for us. Now, after that, the economic pressure. What kind of an economic pressure? Because the US and European Union countries have imposed sanctions. Okay, so the NATO allies have imposed sanctions on countries like Russia and Iran. So, since they have imposed sanctions on these countries, India could not be able to, import the defense equipment, and India has also reduced oil imports from Iran, and that has strained India's relations with Iran. So, therefore, these kind of an economic pressures could strain India's relations with other non-NATO countries. Now, after that, technology transfer. Technology transfer is also a huge, huge aspect when it comes to, uh, the NATO countries usually impose high technology transfer restrictions. It is not very easy for countries like India to import major technologies, major defense technologies, renewable technologies from these NATO countries. So you can give the example of because when NATO countries have imposed restrictions or sanctions on countries like Russia, so it has become India to move forward in collaborative projects like fifth generation fighter aircraft. Okay, fifth generation fighter aircraft. Now, after that, uh, we need to write a possible way forward. So, the way forward include the balanced diplomacy. Balanced diplomacy means we need to increasingly use platforms like Quad. The platforms like Quad will help India engage with these countries, the NATO countries. Okay, so it will help India engage with the NATO countries, and it also helps India maintain good relations with countries like Russia. Okay, so balanced diplomacy is very important. So, apart from maintaining balance between both Russia and the NATO countries, we should also maintain our strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy means the decisions of our foreign policy decisions, or our overall decisions should not be influenced by outsiders. Now, after that, the bilateral engagements are also very important. Okay, so for example, India-France strategic dialogue. So this dialogue could be a key in maneuvering the complex geopolitics with strengthened NATO and US-Europe relations. Now, after that, the self-reliance aspect. For example, there's an Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Now, Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative has been launched by the government. So the primary aim of launching this program is to achieve the self-reliance. Okay. So self-reliance in defense equipment and also manufacturing. So therefore, it could foster self-reliance, and it also reduce dependency on NATO countries. Okay, and India should ensure the self-reliance, and because it should also reduce the excessive dependence on countries like NATO. Now, after that, the climate initiatives. Climate initiatives, for example, India can take a proactive role in global climate initiatives. For example, Paris Climate Agreement, and India could also convince the developed world or the developed countries to contribute for the technology transfer, and also the finances which they are already committed. So thereby, India could also play a very active role as a leader of global South. Leader of global South. Now, if you recently look at India's G20 presidency, so India has taken lead in including African Union as a 21st member of G20. So this again reinforces India's role as a leader of the global South. So therefore, maintaining strategic autonomy will help India have good relations with all the countries without actually moving into the bloc or the military politics. Now, in the conclusion, you just have to emphasize on the importance of India maintaining strategic autonomy. Okay, so India's policy of strategic autonomy, and also engaging with the different partners on issues like terrorism, climate change, technology transfer, defense, and security aspects. So because it is very important for India to deal with countries like China, which have been increasingly becoming a challenge for us, right? So this is how you need to conclude this answer. Now, the 20th question, the last question is, C is an important component of cosmos. Okay, so global cosmos or the global commons, we generally call, so they are actually they don't belong to one particular country, so they belong to all the humanity. So therefore, C is important of cosmos, important component of the cosmos. Now, in this regard, in this context, we need to discuss the role of International Maritime Organization in protecting the environment, also enhancing safety and security. Now, how the International Maritime Organization has been protecting environment and enhancing the maritime safety and security. Now, firstly, you need to write what is a global cosmos. Okay. Now, the sea holds a very significant place in within cosmos because it is part of the global commons. I've already told you what constitutes global commons. Global commons generally means that a particular region on planet Earth that doesn't belong to any particular community or the group. Rather, it belongs to the entire humanity. So there are examples like high seas. Okay, high seas. So beyond exclusive economic zones, Antarctica. Okay, Antarctica. So these are, and even space also. So these are part of global commons, so they belong to the entire humanity. So therefore, sea as a global commons helps in sustaining the life on earth. In fact, the International Maritime Organization has a very crucial and important role in safeguarding the global commons, safeguarding the sea, and it has also launched various initiatives and also come up with various guidelines to ensure that the sea, the global cosmos, sea as a global commons is protected. Now, when we discuss the contribution of International Maritime Organization in protecting the environment, the ocean environment. Firstly, it has come up with the ballast water convention. Okay, a ballast water management convention. So this particular water management convention is actually establishes certain guidelines. Okay, so how to treat the discharged water from the ballast. Okay, so how to treat or discharge the ballast water of ships. So within ships there's a ballast. Okay, so how to treat or discharge the ballast water, and also mitigating the potential introduction of invasive species. So we all know that when ships move from one country to the other country, it usually act as a vehicles in spreading invasive species from one part to the other part. So therefore, the Ballast Water Management Convention of the International Maritime Organization has these guidelines for mitigating the potential introduction of invasive species. Now, after that, the International Maritime Organization also has the MARPOL Convention. Okay, so this convention particularly provides regulations to prevent various types of pollution from the ships. Okay, so this include oil pollution, chemical pollution, sewage and air pollution. Now after that, the energy efficiency regulations. So these energy efficiency particularly aimed at achieving energy efficiency within ships, and also reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. The International Maritime Organization releases the energy efficiency existing ship index, okay, and also the carbon intensity indicator. So these indicator and indexes are primarily aimed at reducing the greenhouse gases from ships and protecting the ocean environment. Now after that, there's also an emission control areas. For example, within seas, there are certain fragile areas. So, in order to protect the fragility of those areas, there are certain emission control areas. So, in that particular areas, the ships emissions used to, the IMO, International Maritime Organization, regulates the emissions. So in order to reduce sulfur and nitrogen oxide emissions from the ships, so this will help in mitigating air pollution in coastal areas. So there's an example in 2021, International Maritime Organization has actually adopted a strategy to address marine plastic litter from ships. Now after that, there's also a global sulfur cap. Now, this global sulfur cap has actually aimed at reducing the permissible sulfur content in fuel used in ships. Now, fuels also contains a sulfur. Now, uh, the sulfur should be permissible, because if it is released into the oceans, then it could threaten the marine biodiversity, marine living organisms. So therefore, International Maritime Organization regulations ensure that the sulfur content would not threaten the marine environment. Now, after that, there's also enhancing safety and security. So, how International Maritime Organization has taken up different measures or coming up with different guidelines and regulations to ensure maritime safety and security. So there's also a SOLAS convention. Okay, so SOLAS convention is actually safety of the life at sea, for marine, shipping, for all those aspects, safety of life at sea. So it has come up with SOLAS convention. It is primarily aimed at the safety of merchant ships. Now, merchant ships usually they take part in the trade. So therefore, this SOLAS convention primarily aimed at the safety of these merchant ships, and it actually sets standards for ship construction, ship equipment, and operation. So these standards will ultimately ensure safety of life at sea. Now, after that, the security measures like ISPS code. So this ISPS code will enhance the security at ports and ships, because so it will result in avoiding collisions between ships. Okay, so therefore it also further enhances security of those ships. Now after that, maritime piracy is also a very pressing challenge. Apart from the robbery, maritime piracy is also a very important challenge. Now, the International Maritime Organization has also taken several countermeasures in this regard, in collaboration with other international organizations and naval forces of different countries. Now, if you look at India, Indian Navy has been playing a very important and a key role in counter maritime operations in the Indian Ocean region. So because of this reason, India is known as net security provider in the region. Net security provider in the region. So therefore, the International Maritime Organization has been working very closely with UN Office for Drugs and Crime. Now, after that, the search and rescue is also a very important factor. And for search and rescue also, the International Maritime Organization has released the global SAR plan. Okay, so this global SAR plan will ensure search and rescue of services. Now, finally, you need to conclude this answer by highlighting the International Maritime Organization's role in preserving marine ecosystems, reducing pollution, and ensuring safe maritime operations. So, this could protect and also conserve the global commons like sea. So, this is how you should conclude this answer. So, with this question, we have discussed all 20th questions in General Studies paper 2. In the next lecture, we will discuss we will discuss General Studies paper 3. Okay, so that's all for today, and thank you so much.